So just a quick life update for me. I am on call, which means that 24/7 I am gonna have to be around 5 meters away from my laptop, so that anytime there's any production issue or there's any traffic management issue, I have to resolve it within 10-20 minutes. And it's kind of stressful because this is the first time I've not done this ever before. This is my first rodeo, and that's kind of stressful. During the workday, it's probably fine, but after work, when you're just watching Netflix, all of a sudden you get a call, and then you have to whip out your laptop and start, figuring out what the problem is. And it's really stressful, especially when it happens at, 2 a.m. in the morning. What happens at 2 a.m. in the morning? I don't know. I don't know how I'm gonna handle it. I hope that whatever happens at 2 a.m. is not going to completely disrupt my sleep schedule, because that'll suck. It feels like it's already winter time because it's getting so cold that I just can't manage anymore. Even though, fun fact, I came from Iowa. I was in college for 4 years in Iowa. Now it's getting down to I think around 1 degree Celsius, which is around 30 Fahrenheit. It's only October, it just doesn't make any sense to me. It's totally bewildering.
It's not a bad day today. Really sunny, though it's still really cold. That's why I'm wearing this down jacket. But I really need to get out a little bit more now. Since I'm on call, I can't really go any further than downtown area for food. So yeah, I have my laptop right in my backpack, so anytime there's any situation, I'm gonna run back or just go to anywhere that has Wi-Fi, and yeah, it'll be good. Just enjoy the sunlight a little bit instead of staying at home for the entire weekend.
So I'm just gonna go hit the gym, and I'll come back and talk about what's a typical day in life for a software engineer.
So what is a typical day in life for a software engineer?
We drink tons of coconut water and play poker tournaments every afternoon and just walk around and do nothing. I'm just joking. Well, what actually happens?
It's actually pretty normal to any other desk job, right? Any white-collar job. It's a 9 to 5, typically 9 to 5 job. Some people come in a little bit later, some people leave a little bit later. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that you can make it to your meetings, and for the rest of the time, wherever you work, it doesn't really matter. As long as you finish your task, finish what is on your plate for typically 2 weeks sprint. So yeah, that's actually pretty okay. I wouldn't say that the work-life balance is a big issue, although at the same time I can't really comment on that because I just barely started out. This is my almost 2.5 months into my first job, so I can't really say if the work-life balance is good, but I would say from my observation of other people in the team and in the larger organization, I can see that a lot of people have really good work-life balance. Once it's 5 o'clock, 5:30, they clock out, don't care anymore. You can enjoy your life, enjoy nightlife, watch television, go out for dinner with friends, whatever. So that's actually pretty good. I would say my first couple of weeks I leave a little bit later than 6, just because I thought that I didn't know anything, which is totally true. And so I try to stay in the office and work on stuff, at least pretending that I'm working on stuff and learning a whole lot about our system, so that I can feel a little bit better about myself, because first couple of weeks were the hardest of any job. It was really hard because I was just mainly trying to make myself feel better. There's this very well known and cliched thing called imposter syndrome, and I totally had that big time. I just thought that I didn't know our system well enough, and I thought that during a lot of the meetings I didn't even know what the jargons and terminologies they were using actually even meant, and it was just very hard. But over time I settle in, I get to understand our component a little bit better and to understand the entire pipeline a little bit better, and then you get more comfortable with your job.
Okay, so let's talk about some fun stuffs that have happened since I moved here. And so far, I'm really in love with this place. There are lots of events and food and stuff going on at the company. There are kids coming to work. There's balloons and playgrounds, and it's just overall a very fun place. And over the weekends, we go see like Shakespeare shows at the park. It's just very interesting experiences. Oh, and the Piano Guys concert. Oh, it's just amazing. And our team holds a lot of morale events like hiking, laser tag, and all the fun stuffs. And we went to see a sea turtle, held an alligator, and just looked at a python. I mean, I held it too. It didn't choke me, at least. We went paddleboarding and kayaking. And over the weekend, I just pretend that I could cook and make myself some good meals and go to the art museum. It's a pretty small museum, but it's a decent size and it has really interesting sculptures and artworks. And I enjoyed it. So now back to my daily work life.
I check my email for the first 10-20 minutes of my day. People get coffee. I don't drink coffee, so I get hot chocolate. And I come back, I settle down. And most of the weekdays in the morning, all the way until 11:30, there's got to be some sort of meeting, right? Either a team meeting or a meeting with the larger organization where we talk about larger goals, or we could have like incident reviews, which is basically reviewing what has happened for the past week, what kind of incidents there are for the service, and we would like to know if we need to scale out our service and if we need to shift traffic or anything like that, just more of the DevOps space. So in the morning, typically not super productive if you're just talking about like software design and coding related tasks. Most of those so-called productive coding time happen in the afternoon, right? So after we come back from lunch, we settle down and start implementing some of the things. So a lot of people believe that as a software engineer, you have to code all the time, every single second of your life. That's just not true. I've actually seen a post on Reddit or somewhere, I can't remember, they were saying some internal statistics of how many lines of code a software engineer writes. They're saying that if you every day you only churn out a couple of hundreds of lines of code, that means you're not productive enough. I think it is just completely ridiculous to measure the productivity of a software engineer team based on the number of lines of code that you write, that you churn out. That's just not right. I think that is way more than that. Well, at least from my almost 3 month experience at a large company, I realized that software engineering is really more about building a product, building a service within a team, and also coordinating with other teams, right, to push forward your agenda, which means that there's a lot of architectural design, and the architecture designs are really nuanced because you have to consider so many different parts of the pipeline and see if it's actually going to work in the long term. So managing expectations and building products, coordinating different people from different teams, these are very vague terms, but these are actually what I think are the most important things that we do as software engineers, not really completely about coding. I mean, coding, don't get me wrong, is very important, of course. I mean, our entire service is in C#, so coding is important, and it's definitely important to know, your language of choice. But that does not take up that much of my time or anybody's time actually. I have been talking to a couple of people in the team and in the larger organization, and some of my friends who also work in the software engineering space, right? We come to a consensus that around the 20-30% of the daily, work life, do you actually put your time in actual coding, because before coding, there's the design, there's the architecture review, there's also talking about the requirements and all sorts of specifications for that little piece of code that you're writing, and you have to discuss that with all kinds of people in order to understand what you're building, right? There's, for a typical application or for a typical service that you might be building, you might be manipulating data, streaming data, then you have your upstream and downstream, and both will have their requirements that you have to meet. You also have your own requirements that you have to talk to them about, and then at the same time, it's also about the data that you are processing or the data that you're owning, right? So there's data privacy, and privacy is a very, very big thing nowadays in tech companies, including the company that I'm working at right now, which means that every single action, every single script, every single line of code that you're writing, you have to think about what that means, right, to the data that you're processing, to the data that is in your hand that you have the responsibility for, which means that there's got to be a lot of legal reviews for where you can retain your data and where can you send your data to. And these are all very important things to consider, and that takes up a lot of time, which means that software engineering is really, really about building products, really, really about solving problems. And solving problem is not only done through coding. Coding is important, but it's way more than that. I am in a team that's working on a product that has been around for decades. It's not really so much about quick iterations, every day churning out code, and, really exciting and stuff like that. Well, we do churn out code, but not as often as you would imagine for maybe a startup, right? So because this service is pretty mature already, so we add on features and also a lot of migrations because of organizational or company-wide goal. So what that means is that it's not just all about coding per se, right? You type your code, whatever. That's the typical thing that people think of when they think of software engineers, but it's more than about that, right? So we also do a lot of maintenance, deployments. We do flighting, which is basically a fancier term for testings, right? So we test it on sandbox machines, on production machines, and then test it on different clusters and see, if your code changes, whether it's breaking anything in the system or not. There's always corner cases and unexpected things that are happening in production. So you just always have to think very carefully about the logic of your code and how it's interacting with your entire system. So that's all very, very important. All right. So yeah, I guess that's basically what we do, what I typically do in the afternoon. Coding a little bit, doing a little bit of deployments, flighting some code on machines, talking to other parts of the team to coordinate amongst different teams to get things done. So that's a very big part of the life of a software engineer. Pushing things forward is always very difficult because when you're in a large company, there are so many people around you, there are so many different teams, they all have their needs and wishes. They could want anything they want, but you're not always gonna give it to them. It's not that easy. So that's why a lot of people didn't really know how important it is to have soft skills. Soft skills is not just those wishy-washy things like doing presentations. Those are very superficial level of soft skill, right? Soft skill is way more than that. What is required, of course, is to understand the nuances of the requirements of your clients, to understand the needs of your clients, to how to push forward your agenda while at the same time not offend other people from other teams, in your communication. So that is very, very difficult and requires a lot of practice, a lot of trial and errors.
Anyways, I think I have talked for way more than I should have. And thank you so much for watching this episode. Happy Halloween. And I will just let you guys enjoy the rest of the Piano Guys concerts.